On October 9th, 1999, Disney Channel premiered one of its earliest original movies, Don't Look Under the Bed, a horror movie starring Erin Chambers and Eric Hodges.
And whatever you do.
Well, there's nothing living under my bed.
Have you looked lately?
Can Granny come out and play?
Don't Look Under the Bed. Don't miss the Saturday premiere, Saturday at 7:30, 6:30 Central on Magical World of Disney.
The movie's basic premise was about a forgotten imaginary friends turning into the boogeyman and terrorizing the town. The movie was the second Disney Channel original movie to ever receive a PG rating due to how scary many of the scenes were. The director, Kenneth Johnson, actually struggled to find the perfect balance between making the movie scary, but not too scary, and the original concepts of the film were actually more disturbing than what ended up being in the final product.
As a director, I was eager to make it spooky and creepy and scary, but not terrifying, you know. The boogeyman himself, in our earliest concept drawings that Sharon did, was really sort of a very dark crow-like creature that you really couldn't see much except eyes and darkness, you know. And we all decided, no, we better go in a different direction.
However, the movie was still considered to be extremely scary, so much so that when it premiered on the channel, Disney began to receive an influx of complaints from worried parents who felt the film was inappropriate and too terrifying for young audiences. The backlash was so persistent that Disney Channel stopped airing reruns of the film in 2006 and has never been played on the channel since. Still, finding the balance of how scary to make the movie was actually not the biggest hurdle during the production of the film. Eric's character Larry, the mischievous imaginary friend, was not written to be a black character, and at the end of the movie, his character was written to have an on-screen kiss with the white lead character of the movie. This was apparently a huge point of contention during production. Disney was worried that an interracial kiss would not be well received in the year of our Lord 1999.
The character was not written for any particular color, and Ty happened to be an African American. And I thought, it's great. I mean, he was the right actor. You know, I said, this is the guy we should have. And Disney really loved him too, and absolutely agreed. And we were already filming, and I got a call one day on the set from somebody at Disney that said, what are you going to do about the very end of the movie? And I said, well, what are you talking about? And he said, well, there's a kiss at the end of the movie where Larry kisses Frances. And I said, yeah. And he said, well, how do we say this politely? She's white and he's not. And I said, yeah. And I said, guys, it's like the end of the 20th century here. What's the problem? But they had some concern about some of the Southern affiliates, particularly, not being happy about that. And I said, it's an important moment in the piece because it's where Frances gets a little kiss on the lips from Larry and begins to think, oh, maybe I'm more grown up than I thought I was. It's sort of her first moment of stepping into the next phase of adolescence.
Different options for the kiss were explored, including having the kiss be implied and happen off-screen, or having the kiss be cut from the movie altogether. Kenneth fought for the scene to stay in the movie, and in the end, Disney relented.
You know, and I really talked to the Disney folks about it, and they came back to me and said, you know what, you're right. This should not be an issue. And I was so proud of Disney.
The film aired on the channel, and the interracial kiss ended up being the least controversial aspect of the film in the eyes of parents. I've always noticed that in ensemble casts where the majority of characters are white, there's often only a few spots for characters of color, if any. Specifically when there is one black character in a show with a fully white cast. I immediately expect them to fill the undateable co-star role. By undateable, I don't mean that the character is portrayed as undesirable or unattractive, or even that the character never dates. I'm specifically talking about those instances where a non-white supporting character is never allowed to date a white main character in the cast, for no other reason besides the fact that they're not white. This trend is actually something that I've noticed a lot in my many years of watching an endless amount of TV and sitcoms, and something that has always stood out to me, especially in those series where pretty much the whole premise of the show is watching the characters potentially get together. So it becomes even more obvious when all the characters are hooking up with each other, except for the one black guy. So in today's video, at the risk of making a superfluous analysis, let's look at some cases of the undateable black co-star. One of the more prevalent examples of the undateable black co-star is the co-star who so obviously should date the main white lead, but for some reason is never allowed to. I find this specifically to be the most prevalent in TV shows where the main dynamic among the characters is that they all hook up with each other at some point. Those kind of shows make it that more pronounced when the only black character on the cast is never allowed to date a main cast member. So I already briefly touched on this in another video, but it was always pretty weird to me that Andre from Victorious was the only cast member who never got a serious love interest with any of the other main cast members. I wouldn't say that the main point of Victorious is the characters hooking up with each other, but it does happen a lot. So if you've never seen it, Victorious was a sitcom on Nickelodeon following teens aspiring to make it in Hollywood while attending a performing arts high school. Our main protagonist, Tori, meets and very quickly befriends Andre, a really talented musician and singer. Victorious stands out among other shows on the network because of how huge the main cast was. There were 7 main characters in total, 4 girls and 3 boys, and so that presented a perfect opportunity to pair characters off for potential relationships. Victorious was a show built on the increased popularity of shipping culture in the late 2000s and early 2010s. Fans were eager and foaming at the mouth to see characters get together. Now with Andre specifically, it really did feel like the show had absolutely no idea what to do with him or what direction to take his character in. As the seasons went on, he got increasingly less to do and was hardly ever a part of the main plot of any storylines. But in the background, his co-stars were all hooking up with each other. One of the most prevalent ships of the entire series is the love triangle between Tori, Beck, and Jade. Beck, as a character, also had less to do as the show went on. Pretty much his whole characterization was to be a potential love interest for Tori and Jade. In the end, Tori and Beck almost got together, but Beck got back with Jade, and Robbie and Kat were beginning to have a romantic relationship. Andre, on the other hand, got no one. And I felt like it was particularly weird because the obvious answer in a show built on ships would be to just pair him with Tori. They already like each other, have a good relationship, they work well together and play off each other really well. I felt like a Tori-Andre relationship would have been the most obvious decision ever, but for whatever reason they never ever went down that road. And let's say for argument's sake they're only interested in a Tori-Beck pairing. They don't want Tori with anyone else unless it's Beck. Well, they never let her end up with Beck anyways, but then if Tori is Beck's big love interest, why not just have Andre date any of the other girls? They did briefly toy with the idea of Andre dating Jade, and I was actually really surprised they even entertained the idea of that, only because Andre and Jade never seemed like an obvious or popular pairing because she's always paired with Beck. I'd say the order of likelihood of Andre ending up with someone would have been Andre and Tori, Andre and Kat, Andre and Trina, then Andre and Jade. It just felt very haphazard to me. Andre and Jade barely interact with each other, and when they do, it's never anything noteworthy. So I already knew this ship was not going to be taken seriously, but also at the time, Jade was already back with Beck, so I really knew it was never going to go anywhere. Jade was never going to break up with Beck for Andre unless they play it out for full episode arcs. But I was actually really surprised at how sincere the episode was. Andre's attraction to Jade did come out of nowhere, but I felt like the show's approach to it was actually on the relationship. I realized that Andre was the only person in the entire show that Jade was nice to. Even her own boyfriend Beck was constantly ridiculed by her, but not Andre. It was a really sweet side to her that we don't see often. But whatever, the show didn't care. At the end of the episode, a random girl flirts with Andre, he gets over his crush, and that's it.
You okay now? You wonky?
Not sure. It might take me a little while before I know if I...
Oh my gosh, Andre, that song was so hot.
Yeah?
Yeah. Want to go hang?
I can hang. Jade who?
Another thing that I think is really crucial to the trope is that to avoid having the black character date one of the black main cast members, we'll introduce a guest character for them to be of the same race. The only girls that Andre ever did that only appeared for that episode and never appeared ever again. And they were also always black. Now I make it a point to say that the girls were also black, not because I'm disappointed that Andre dates black girls, but more so to point out that the reason I think they never took Andre dating another cast member seriously was only because he was black. I think they felt uncomfortable with the idea of an interracial coupling. I truly believe that if Andre were white, he would have been paired with Tori, or maybe the Jade thing would have actually gone somewhere, but they just couldn't commit to the idea. Even Robbie, who is notoriously bad with girls in the show, gets to actually have a romantic relationship with Kat. Andre also kind of reminds me of Michael from Zoe 101. Zoe 101 was never a super popular show, so people might not know, but Michael was the original Andre. Only main black cast member, he was also never allowed to date any of the other girls, despite the fact that the character characters were constantly hooking up with each other. They did introduce a guest character for him to date by the end of the show, but I always thought it was weird. Vampire Diaries is definitely one of those shows where the basic premise is the entire cast hooking up with each other, but in a supernatural setting. So if you've never seen the show, it's a Twilight-esque drama about a girl, Elena, torn between two hot vampire boyfriends. Bonnie is Elena's best friend and the only black character in the main cast. So of course, she gets treated like shit. When I said this show is about the entire cast hooking up with each other, I meant it. Our main protagonist, Elena, starts off in a loving relationship with one of the hot vampires, Stefan, and then she dates the other brother, Damon. Anyways, after a whole magic mumbo-jumbo fiasco, Elena is essentially killed off from the show, leaving an opportunity for Damon and Bonnie to date. Pretty much the whole scenario is that Elena has been cursed and is in a sleep-like coma state, and she will stay that way for as long as Bonnie is alive. So when Bonnie dies, Elena can wake up and resume her life. And I was kind of under the impression that they were building up to Damon and Bonnie dating. When Elena was being put under that curse, she told Damon to continue living his life and to not wait on her. Bonnie and Damon had always had a love-hate relationship, and now Elena was completely out of the picture, so they could date. But they never allow them to. And not only that, Bonnie's pretty much the only cast member who never develops a serious relationship with any of the other cast. Hell, Caroline pretty much hooked up with every single main male cast member. She hooked up with Damon, she dates Stefan, Tyler, Klaus. Bonnie gets nothing. Even when it makes perfect sense for her to date one of the cast members, they never do it. She did briefly date Elena's younger brother, but that was short-lived and honestly kind of weird. She only really gets small guest roles to date, who pretty much leave until the end of the episode, until they bring in a whole new character, Enzo, that they paired her with for a while, but then they killed him off too. She's written in a way where I'm pretty sure the writers and creators hate her. Charlotte is another character where it was implied so often that she could date the main white character and they just never did it.
Oh, what secret do you want us to tell him?
That you and Henry are boyfriend and girlfriend.
In the Nickelodeon sitcom Henry Danger, the main cast member Henry on occasion has a somewhat flirtatious relationship with Charlotte, but the show always resets and never lets them actually date each other. In fact, the show will have Henry in a relationship with other girls in other shows, but they never let him and Charlotte have any real meaningful developments in their relationship. They hint at it a lot. There were episodes that suggested that Henry and Charlotte liked each other, but they would never ever follow through on it. I think this might be the only will they won't they where they never actually explore the will they angle. I actually didn't watch a lot of Henry Danger, but I do think that it's interesting that they skip and skate past the most obvious ship in the entire show. Now I want to talk about the concept of never the one. This is in line with the undateable trope, but with the caveat being that these characters do get to date members of the main cast, but either as a joke or only for a short period of time because they were simply never the one. They are never really the loves of these people's lives. They're just something to keep them busy until they move on to the next best thing. Mercedes from Glee is actually a really good example of this. She spent most of the show not really dating anyone from the main cast. At one point, they made her have a crush on Kurt, the only gay character in the cast. It was pretty bad. There was one point where they had a very brief thing with Puck, but he was only using her. It wasn't really a serious relationship.
Get ready, black girl from Glee Club, whose name I can't remember right now. The Puckster is about to make you his.
And she dated another main cast member in the later seasons, and that was kind of cute. They did seem like a really good match for each other, but the show couldn't commit to making them endgame. They couldn't make it a thing. They have an on and off again relationship, and in the end, she ends up not dating anyone. And this also really feels into the disposable black girlfriend trope, the popular trope where the black girlfriend may date a guy, but she's not really the girl he's supposed to end up with. A really popular case of this is Angela from Boy Meets World. She had a really popular and well-received relationship with Sean. A lot of people loved it and responded really well to it. Some would even say they were destined for each other. But in Girl Meets World, the prequel series, we found out that they broke up, and not only did they break up, Sean went on to date and marry someone else. So Angela wasn't the love of his life, it was really the white blonde woman. And this happens all the time, even in animation like Invincible. That girlfriend is really just a placeholder for the actual love interest, the white girl. Now, this doesn't just happen with black characters. any POC can be affected by this, and I think the most frustrating and obvious example of this to me is Raj from The Big Bang Theory. This is especially heartbreaking because Raj, more than anyone else in the show, really wants to be loved and be in a relationship. He struggles from selective mutism, where for years he was physically unable to even speak with a woman unless he was intoxicated. After several seasons, the show finally pushed Raj away from that, and he overcame his psychosis, and you'd think that would mean that it's a push in the right direction and that he's actually going to be able to have a long-lasting, meaningful relationship with someone else. Anyone, honestly. It doesn't even have to be someone in the main cast. And they do a little where they allow him to date, but it's always jeopardized. It's so bad that at one point he straight up enters into an arranged marriage his parents put together just because he didn't want to die alone. And even then it didn't work out. It's actually so crazy because literally everyone else in the show ends up getting married and having kids. Even Sheldon, who infamously is uncomfortable with human touch and doesn't even like romance, he was still able to find someone, fall in love, and get married.
It was gonna be like the old days, the four of us hanging out, playing video games before you guys all got girlfriends. Do you have any idea what it's like to be the only one without a girlfriend? Even if I get one someday, I'll still be the guy who got a girl after Sheldon Cooper!
I was honestly so surprised. I was certain that when the show was ending, that they would, at the very last minute, throw in a love interest for Raj. Pretty much all of the main female cast members are only there to be love interests for the guy on the main cast. Bernadette and Amy got added to the main cast because of their connection to the guys, so I thought they would do something similar for Raj, but no, he ends the show all alone. And again, it's especially sad just because of how much he went through over the years trying to find love, and the fact that they allow literally everyone else in the show to have a happy ending. Everyone else gets to find love and be married except the one Indian guy. I just always thought that was crazy. I noticed this trend of undateable co-star, and I think the reason why this happens so much is that in an ensemble cast that is probably created and written primarily by white people, there's only often going to be one spot for a person of color. And so obviously most people tend to date within their race anyways, but if there's only one person of color on the cast, the instinct that a lot of writers seem to go for is just introduce a guest character for them to date. But because they are just a guest character, you hardly get to see them or their relationship develop. And for whatever reason, it never just occurs to them to either, one, have more spots for characters of color, or just let the one black guy date the main white girl. Like, is that such a crazy idea? I think because characters like that mostly fill the goofy best friend role, they never take them seriously as romantic interests. Another thing I find interesting is how that is also reflective of real life, because the same thing also happens in reality shows. In dating shows like Love Island and The Perfect Match, there's often only one black person, maybe two, and if there's two black people, they're expected to automatically date each other because they're both black. Or if there's only one, the show will bring in another black person that they didn't have before just to give the person someone to date. And I always just think it's so crazy how that shows up in reality shows. So I say all that to say that I still think that there are very strong remnants dating all the way back to the year of our Lord 1999, where for whatever reason, white creators seem to still have an uncomfortability with the idea of a black co-star dating a white lead on their show. And I don't even necessarily think that it's always coming from a place of prejudice. I think because the structure of most shows is to have an all-white or mostly white cast, they tend to just default in having the white people date each other, and then the other, they may get a guest star here and there to flirt around with. And that isn't even me saying that I prefer to see these characters be in interracial relationships over dating someone within their own race. I'm just saying that it's crazy to me that before thinking of just adding more people to the main cast to be potential love interests to that character, or the very obvious answer of just allowing that character to date a main white cast member, the only thing that they can think of is either to keep the character single or to just bring in a guest star for occasional scenes. This is why I think creating opportunities for diverse creatives is so important. That's why shows that make it a point to be more inclusive with their writing staff and on-screen talent expands the possibility of what we can see on screen and is more intentional about having care with the characters, which hopefully means less of the undateable co-star trope. But hopefully we move on from the Disney era of being scared to see an interracial kiss on camera.